Throughout Poppy Playtime and build up for the long-awaited Chapter 3, we have gotten tons of little pieces of news hinting at what the chapter may contain. For example, in the Poppy Playtime ARG, we learned about Rowan Stoll, who was killed by Boxy Boo, and in the Huggy Wuggy VHS tapes, we got to see what happens when the monsters escape out into the real world. However, there has been a mystery character showing up multiple times in Poppy Playtime that nobody is talking about, who I think reveals the full truth about Poppy Playtime's story and what could possibly be in Chapter 3. So essentially, while looking back at the Poppy Playtime ARG, as you know, we hear the story of a character named Rowan Stoll speaking out against the factory, and then in response, after a few VHS tapes, he was sent downstairs on the security cams to meet none other than Boxy Boo, who eats Rowan alive, which is the last we ever see of him. Now, in other theories on this topic, I noticed that in the screening room for Project Playtime, we get a message from somebody who calls themselves the Doctor, and then brings up the idea for the Bigger Bodies Initiative, an initiative that focused on turning their toys into real-life beings to replace workers in the factory and to keep them from snitching about their secrets. We learned from Chapter 1 that Huggy Wuggy was created to be the security guard, and in Chapter 2, we learned that Mommy Longlegs was created to watch over the orphans in the factory. But then there's Boxy Boo. What does he do? Well, I concluded in my Boxy Boo theory video that his purpose was to silence and kill those who threaten the factory's safety, like Rowan Stoll from the ARG. Since we see Rowan get baited by something into going downstairs and then being ambushed by Boxy out of nowhere, it felt like a planned move or something done by somebody else to remove him from the factory, especially after he talked negatively about them in his VHS tapes and the letter he sent out as well. But something we never really got an answer to in the ARG is what happened between his last couple VHS tapes and him being killed by Boxy Boo that caused him to go and confront Boxy to be eaten alive. We have one clip of him going downstairs, but other than that, we don't know much. However, I think we are missing something incredibly important to the Poppy Playtime story here that could reveal to us everything that we've been wanting to know. See, looking at all the files for the ARG on Rowan's computer, they usually all have a purpose of some sort. Whether that be giving us a teaser for Project Playtime, giving us codes and new files, or just giving us hints to help out with the ARG. However, there are 3 files in Rowan's computer that are completely meaningless and were never explained even months after the ARG finished. This random photo on a desk and these 2 security camera tapes, all of these random files never ended up being used for puzzles or anything in the ARG, so people just sort of forgot about them. However, they clearly have importance to the game because they must have showed them for some reason clearly. And breaking these down, starting with the security tapes, 2 things stick out to us here. For starters, we have this VHS tape pointing towards a stair hall, which is actually just the stair hall shown in Chapter 1 that written over actually reads Stairway to Hell. And then the second camera tape shows us what appears to be some kind of spiraling staircase that is torn apart and is overall meaningless. Now, we will get back to those clips in a second. However, I want to direct your attention to this sheet of paper that we also see completely unexplained from the ARG. See, if we look incredibly closely at this paper, we can see it is a notice of disciplinary action for sabotage, describing that an employee sabotaged factory equipment, ruining a paint machine and causing a recall of some of the toys in the factory. And most importantly, if we go to the bottom, we can see a manager signature that appears to be Doctor, who would be the same character who invented the Bigger Bodies Initiative, although it's hard to tell for sure. And then the signed off employee who was in trouble is Patty Hall. Now remember this name because she becomes very important in this video. In fact, we see her name in Chapter 2 multiple times hidden inside of the rejected toys room. For example, we could see a rejected paper in the room referencing the batch of toys that we saw originally from the ARG paper. And what's interesting about this paper is that they say the entire batch of toys is miscolored due to Patty Hall sabotaging the machine. No, saboteur has since been dealt with. And a few things stood out to me about this. For starters, why in the world did this Patty Hall character decide to ruin all of these toys for Playtime Co? The paper from the ARG specifically outlines that there is substantial evidence supporting the assumption that this sabotage was done in some sort of defiance to several Playtime Co's practices. And so clearly Patty Hall, whoever they may be, did this in order to try and ruin the company and its reputation as some sort of retaliation. We don't have any concrete evidence as to why she did it, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. However, what's most important about Patty Hall and her story is that on the rejected paper, all they say about her is that saboteur has been dealt with. And if you didn't know, saying dealt with is sort of just a nice way of saying they got rid of her or killed her. Now, on the surface, this doesn't have much backing outside of just words written on a paper, and they could mean anything. But if we dig deeper and look at the disciplinary action paper, they said that Patty Hall was demoted from toy designer and will be sent downstairs to storage B to receive further instructions. Once again, being intentionally vague about what happened happened to Patty Hall, not really ever giving any insight as to her whereabouts. So what happened to her? Well, I'm gonna be blunt. I think that they killed her, because as we remember, we were given this very obscure camera tape showing Rowan Stoll just seconds before dying walking down some menacing staircase, which then leads to the separate video file that shows us him dying. But why would they show us this entirely separate video of him walking down the stairs? It's a really weird detail to include. Well, clearly it's of course to let us know that the room Boxy Boo was in was at the bottom floor of the factory, hence him walking down there before dying. And in fact, stairs play an even bigger role in the story, because looking now at the two security cams we talked about earlier, we know that this one is simply the security cam that we see in chapter 1 focusing on a door leading to some staircase that is titled in blood Stairway to Hell. And then the second camera shows us what we can infer to be on the other side of this room based on these similar doors at similar angles, showing us what appears to be a literal stairway to hell. Now, whether or not this staircase and the staircase from Rowan Stoll's security cam are the same is basically impossible to tell, because this cam is taken in real life while this one is taken in an in-game location. But what they both have in common is that they represent doom in the lower parts of the factory. Rowan Stoll dies the moment he goes into the basement, and having a staircase called the Stairway to Hell doesn't sound very inviting either. And now from all this information, what I'm really beginning to wonder is, was Patty Hall the second victim of Boxy Boo? Hear me out. Like we said before, Rowan Stoll originally died by going down the stairs and meeting Boxy Boo in a weird empty room. And I personally think that this room he enters might be Storage B or some storage room based on the random objects barely visible in the background, and also Boxy Boo's presence, not to mention Rowan Stoll was not scared of Boxy Boo at all from the video, which is really weird since just before we see him panicking realizing all the monsters were in fact real from his VHS tapes, so clearly he didn't know Boxy Boo existed and wasn't scared of him at all for that reason. But then this brings us to this Patty Hall character. She has an eerily similar story to Rowan Stoll. She randomly did something wrong to get onto the bad side of the higher-ups, that of which in this example being sabotaging the paint to possibly retaliate against the factory. Then all of a sudden she was dealt with and was sent downstairs to Storage B, where she would just never be seen again. I really think she had to be the second victim of Boxy Boo after Rowan Stoll. So what does all of this tell us for chapter 3? Well, we know we are exploring the Playcare location for chapter 3, and we will presumably start learning about the dark truth about the children and what happened to them in the factory. However, it seems like we are also starting to get some hints about what happened to the missing employees in the factory, who were the ones who originally sent us the letter that started the game, based on Rowan Stoll, who we know died, and this new character Patty Hall. Not to mention, at this point, it seems sort of obvious that we're probably going to be revisiting chapter 1 at some point as well, because we have this Stairway to Hell location that they are teasing, and also there's this mysterious door that we never got to use in chapter 1 either that leads to nothing as far as we know. So it seems like whether it be in chapter 3 or in the near future, we will also be coming back to chapter 1 as well. Otherwise, why would they be showing us all this different stuff? But speaking overall, I'm not exactly sure who Patty Hall is and her origins. We just don't know enough about her now. But this mysterious character hidden throughout the chapters and the ARG clearly has a much greater purpose in the game that they're not telling us. Now, what is that purpose? Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Let me know your theories down in the comments below, because this theory isn't quite perfect yet. It's just missing something. But in the meantime, check this video out, subscribe, and peace.